Education Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Thursday, March 25th, 2021. It is 6 p.m. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to all members of the public. I will now take a motion to approve the agenda.
I move the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion and a second by Aaron. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Aye. That is approved. First up, high school schedule. Mr. Suter, right out of the gate.
Have Mr. Boyd come up with me, if that's okay? Bet. Well, we wanted to come back this evening and kind of give you, the board, an update of where the high school is at with the work we've done to develop a schedule for next year. I don't know how much more information you would like to have. Last time I was here, I talked to you about how we had made the change to go from an 8-period day to a block in order to do the things we felt we needed to do this summer to address protocols that were coming down about COVID and how schools were to hopefully stay open by doing some different things. And so we went with a block schedule. Throughout the year, we've grown, we've learned a lot of things about a block schedule, and at some point we gave our students, our parents, and our teachers a chance to have some input on what kind of schedule we're going to move forward with. Are we going to go back to an 8-period day, or do we want to stay with a block? As I shared with you at the last meeting, the responses that we received back through those surveys were very, very positive and very strong, that there was an interest in staying with a block schedule or making some adjustments to what we had come up with on the fly over the summer, but continue that same block format. And so I'm here tonight, I guess, to let you know that after our meeting, when I made it clear to the board that nothing had been decided fully, but that we were seeing some real positive things come back to us from the surveys and through discussions with staff. After that meeting, we went back and we had a committee of teachers that we asked if they would like to be part of the decision-making process. And we went back and we had 2 more meetings where we went back and looked at the data that we had, talked to some schools that have either had an 8-period day or have an 8-period day and gone to a block, or vice versa, had a block and gone back to a more traditional 7 or 8-period day. And I guess I just want you to know that our committee met more times after that, reviewed, had some good conversations, but ultimately that committee of teachers came to me with the recommendation that we develop a block schedule for Beatrice High School starting next year. We want to do some things different with it. As I said, we've identified some areas that we feel have been either confusing, or in reflection we could have done things differently. And so I'm here to let you know that we want to move forward as a school. We want to move forward with a block schedule, with how we provide instruction to our students. And I guess I'm open to any questions you might have, or if you'd like me to delve into certain areas of that decision-making, I can.
So Jason, will you still have kind of the even and odd days like they are now, or will you go more to, I think, a traditional block where, maybe it's a quarter or a semester, so a student,
Yeah, no, we would call it a modified block, Eric, and we would still run, we ran these odd and even days, and what our plans were and what we've done this year is if the week started on an odd day, Monday, then the odd was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then next week it was just different. Try to make sure we're getting those same classes covered. We would do the same thing, except we would have more, it would be more strict. It would be, every Monday would be an odd day, every Tuesday would be an even day. On our Wednesdays, when we meet with our students and have our PLC dismissal, those days on Wednesdays would be all 8 periods for approximately 35 minutes. And then Thursday would be an odd day, and Friday would be an even day. And we would run that same format. We've had people say, we can't remember what day it is.
Right.
We've had snow days where, okay, we lost another even day, we need to go back and make up an even day somehow. That's been a concern that teachers have shared with us, is we want to make sure that we look at, are our classes meeting about the same amount of time? Because if you have 2 or 3 snow days and some late starts, and it all happens to fall on even days, you can really get behind.
And that happened this year?
It happened this year. And so we would be more strict with what those days were. And we really, I'll be honest, the teachers really liked the idea. And a lot of these ideas came to us from teachers. This committee was excellent. They worked hard and they took it serious. The Wednesday is something the teachers are really sold on, because the other thing that comes up as a concern sometimes with block is when kids miss school. Say your daughter's a golfer, she might miss a day for golf. The concern comes up is when you miss a day, you're missing 4 90-minute periods sometimes. Teachers really felt that it's 2 ways to look at it. They felt it's good that they only miss 4 periods on those days that they're missing instead of all 8. But how can we also help get in there and make sure they're not missing large amounts of class instruction? And so they really like the Wednesday, where on Wednesday, if a student missed Monday or missed Monday and Tuesday, they're going to see that student on Wednesday and then hopefully on Thursday and Friday also. And so they really did not like that we did a Wednesday was just another odd or even day, the way we set it up. This, in the new format, Wednesdays would be all 8 periods. And those periods would be, we'd push that, we'd probably get 35 minutes out of each class period. So it's a good way to get kids caught up if they would miss a day before Wednesday, and so forth. So. Any other questions?
So regardless of the class, it's gonna be 90 minutes.
I'm gonna say 90 minutes, but it may
Give or
be,
take.
it may be 87 minutes. It's
Right.
just, the other thing that we'll do is we developed 4 lunch periods this year, Lisa, to cut down on our numbers in the lunchroom and spread kids out over 4 lunch periods instead of the typical 3. And we feel we'll be able to go back to 3. And so that gives us a chance to make some adjustments with exactly the amount of time that each class would be, but they would be approximately 90 minutes, yes. Except for on Wednesdays, and they would go to all 8 periods for about 35 minutes. I've got an example that our committee kind of came up with. If you'd like to see that, I can show it to you. I would preface that it's not set in stone. We have still some work to do on it, but if you'd like to see that just to get a visual, I can share that with you. Okay?
I guess one of the questions I had is, how does that affect like our kids that are involved in, our fine arts programs? Because I don't look at that any differently than I look at like an athletic practice. Kids are not playing their instruments or not singing every day.
Yeah. The other thing I didn't mention is we also, with the development of this block schedule, I mentioned it last time, we'll create classes that'll be called, for lack of term, we call them skinnies. So it'd be, in some of our fine arts classes, those teachers would like to see their kids every day for 45 minutes instead of every other day for 90. So I could see like a concert choir class being a 45-minute class period. You could have 2 of those. You'd set 2 of those up within that 90-minute block. And so we would create those also.
That was just a question that a parent had
Yeah.
posed to me when.
Yeah, so not every class would be 90 minutes.
Okay.
We would go, we've already started collecting from some of our teachers which classes they teach that they feel strongly would be better taught in a 45-minute setting, and we'll create those as skinnies. The thing is, you'd have to have several skinnies so that when
So you.
concert choir was over, there's another class those kids can sign up for.
Gotcha.
Okay? And study halls might be another class that we say is going to be a 45-minute time frame. Okay? So look at this schedule. And this came from our committee of teachers. We'd start off Mondays odd. There's first period's 90 minutes, third period's 90 minutes. This shows something that we have some interest in. 20 minutes, because of our lunches and running 3 lunches, 5th hour becomes longer. Or or 6th hour on an even day becomes longer. And so our teachers said, let's look at how can we create more of a study time, or a mentor period, or a time where we can read the bulletin, or a time where activity sponsors could have meetings with their kids. And let's develop that within that 5th period. So that's where you see that independent academic period. It could be used for a variety of things. It could be just a time where a student has 20 minutes in the middle of their day just to work on some homework, or go back to their morning teacher and get some extra explanation of what they learned in class that period. We really liked that. Our teachers thought that was an idea they had. Can we put that old mentor 20 minutes of time back into about the middle of the class, of the day, and so that which reflects that 20 minutes of time there, and then we have our 3 lunches, and then we'd finish up with 7th hour for 90 minutes, still dismissing at 3:15 as we have been this year, and there's just some notes there. And then you also see on this schedule how Wednesday would look with all 8 periods being met during that time. So that's proposal 2. We have one that we have without that academic that period in there. And we have a third one that has something else tweaked a little bit different, but majority of our teachers on our committee really like number 2, and that's the one I chose to bring and show you tonight. We've got some work to do. We've got to get things, we're just finished with registration. Our students are done registering for classes for next year. And we just got to get our schedule set and start getting kids plugged into those periods. So. But I did bring this tonight just to, for me, it's always better to see it as a visual, and this is what a possibility of what it could look like. And I do, and our teachers and I think our students would like that academic, 20 minutes of academic time during that 5th or 6th hour, right in the middle of the day. It's crazy, guys. I used to read the bulletin. I mean, every day I'd have just about 3 minutes of time where they'd give me the bulletin, I'd get on the intercom and I'd read the bulletin. Never thought anybody was really listening to me, for sure. I've had more kids say, why don't you read the bulletin anymore? You know, that would be a time we could do that. It would be a time where our science club sponsor could get a science club meeting during that time. It would be well used for a variety of different things. So.
I think that idea of having that in there for time for activity sponsors to meet with kids, and those meetings are all encompassing, no matter what club or organization that is. It could be science club, it could be, FBLA, it could be any of those things. Having that in there for them to utilize that time, that's a good idea. I like that.
And one good thing about that too is if you have a kid in science club, but they also play soccer or things like that, you start running into issues with that after school when they're trying to have their meetings. And so originally, when we did have that, that was kind of an opportunity for those clubs to be able to meet, to not run into those issues as much. So that's kind of helpful too.
So we'd have 90-minute classes, we'd have some 45-minute classes, and we'd have a independent academic period built in. We'd be more structured. We'd have Wednesday, all 8 periods would meet. We just think with the feedback that we've received through the surveys, this is what our students and our parents and our teachers are in favor of at this time.
I think another important thing to mention with this is, like Mr. Suter said, we just kind of did what we had to this summer, and obviously, or last summer, and we learned a lot. The biggest piece that I think we missed was professional development for our teachers and how to teach a block and how to do it effectively. The lesson structure and lesson plan is a little bit different, and you can't lecture traditionally, if you will, for 90 minutes. It doesn't work, and so that is part of the plan. Will be to really focus on helping our teachers learn how to do this and how to do it really effectively, how to do it research-based wise, and I think that will be very helpful in the long run. I think even more people will like it. It makes sense that some classes feel like it's long, and then you've got other classes like science or autos or things like that where this is amazing, because wood shop, by the time they get tools out and everything, they've got 10 minutes to work on something before they gotta get everything cleaned up and put away. With this, it's much different. And so I am excited about that aspect of things, but I also know that we're gonna need to do a really good job of working with our teachers to get them fully ready to implement a block and teach in a block schedule.
I echo Mr. Boyd's comments. Our teachers have been amazing this year. They've done a wonderful job. We need to go back and, if we go to this, we need to give them professional development. Designing a lesson for a 45-minute period is much different than designing a lesson for a 90-minute period. And we hope, as he said, some of our classes, especially our hands-on, project-based, those classes, I'm hopeful that we'll develop classrooms where we do more of that than we were doing in a 45-minute class period. Because you have to have movement. You can't have kids sitting in the seats for 90 minutes. And that's been a concern that's been voiced through if there's any negatives to this, it's too long to sit. Yeah, it is. We can't have lessons developed that are just sitting for 90 minutes. And teachers will have to, we don't want them lecturing anyway for 45 minutes, but you can't lecture for a 45-minute class period. You'll have to develop some lessons, some hands-on, some movement within the class, those kinds of things.
Good, I like that. I think it'll be interesting to see how this, more structure moves forward.
Yeah. And I can sure come back and let you know how it's going throughout the year, if you'd like. If you don't, that's okay.
All right, does anybody else have any more questions or comments?
Can I ask one question to Jason since he's here? What plans for graduation? Normal, what? I'm sorry, I know it's not on the agenda, but.
No, it's not.
Curious, because it's getting that time.
We are gonna have graduation. And I talked to the senior class officers the other day, and I think we're looking at doing some kind of outdoor graduation at the House of Orange. News to them, but I think we are. But we're gonna have plan A, and we're gonna have a plan B. And we've not had graduation since the high schools moved out to the new school outdoors, because we've got air conditioning indoors, and why would we run that risk with weather? I think with where we're still at with masks and some things, the kids are excited. They would like to have, for example, the stage set up, not on the B in the middle of the field, but down towards the front, chairs on the track, parents and their family members in the stands behind them, and doing an outdoor graduation, and having people spread out. And I think that was what we're leaning towards. If we run into bad weather, then we're looking at how could we move that quickly, either into the ozone or into the Hevelone Center. If we go to the Hevelone Center, we probably need to reduce the amount of people that could go. Obviously, seniors and their families would be there. But if we're outside, we might be able to open it up and have a pretty good turnout.
Good.
And it will be on May 9th at 3 o'clock. So, you guys okay with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I'm gonna meet with the seniors. Remember last year, we did a Zoom call with the seniors and kind of came up with the idea of the car drive-up graduation. And to be honest, we got a lot of positives about that. A lot of apprehension, a lot of, oh my gosh, how's this gonna work? And it worked out really well. And we even had some students say, we should do that again. I would like us not to be in cars. I think we can do it outside at the House of Orange. What I would ask you to do is, I shouldn't ask you to pray, but we need a nice day like we had last year, sunny, 75, hardly any wind, and we'll have a great ceremony.
What's really nice about it is that the kids really have more hands-on probably than they have in years past.
Yeah, I'm trying to involve them more. We haven't necessarily, because we've always done it in the ozone, and that's been a very nice ceremony also for years and years, but last year forced us to rethink it, and this year I think I'm okay with trying to do it outdoors if that's what the kids want, and I think it would make sense with where we're at with social distancing and trying to get as many people as we can there to honor those kids.
Well, I just, like I said, I think it's fun for the kids to be very hands-on and participate participate in the planning.
Thanks for asking.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jason. All right, next up, we have strategic planning. Dr. Nielsen.
Yay, very excited to finally get back to strategic planning, finally get back to where we need to be. So I was on a conference call, Danielle and I called or Zoomed with Matt Domney from Seward. And he is the one that will help lead our charge and lead our planning sessions. So here is what our timeline is going to look like. Prior to May 20th, we will administer surveys to all stakeholders. So we will gather the data so that we have that. We will then, prior to August 1st, identify the district strategic planning team members. So we will look and say, okay, who do we want on this team? And we will probably start asking for volunteers, start thinking about, we want a wide selection because it's nice to see different perspectives to bring to the table. We will then complete the district profile, which we already have it started and mostly completed. This is just where our data is, just anything that we need to add into those pieces. That'll be done by August 1st. Our meeting sessions are going to start the week of August 23rd. So the week of August 23rd will be our first meeting session. We will then come back the week of August 30th and have a second and a third session. And we are talking to Matt to figure out, are these gonna be full days, are they gonna be half days? What are we looking at for, as we look at these days and plan? We will make sure that the strategic planning team members know, a month ahead of time so that they can adjust schedules. And need be, so that we can make sure that they are there. We're looking at, do we do it during the day? Do we do it in the evening? Kind of where our mind's at. That's one of the questions that we asked is, if we do it in the evening, are our minds fresh and ready to go and starting to think about new or creative ideas? Or would it be better to do maybe just an 8 to 11:30 or an 8 to noon, feed everyone and then head out, come back for another half day? Or would it be better to do a full day? So those are the things that we're kind of questioning, but we want to make sure that we do it to where all members can be engaged and fully engaged, because it is going to take a lot of brain work. We know that. The week of September 13th, our goal will be to have the rough draft of strategies and objectives, and we will share them with staff and community. Board members are already part of this, so we know the board members will know most of what's going on. And then the week of September 27th, we will start the action plans and the cost-benefit analysis. The week of October 18th, we will look at half-day sessions at buildings to work on building their site plans, and we've got to figure out how that's going to work. It may take us a couple weeks to get their site plans built, just kind of working and figuring out who's providing the training, how are we rolling this out, how is this happening, but we're looking at that week of, or probably middle to end of October to getting that one accomplished. Week of November 1, we want to finalize and review the strategic plan with the entire team. So the week of November 1, we're going to bring the entire team back together. And then November board meeting, we will bring the rough draft to the board. And then December board meeting will be the seal of approval. So our goal is by the end of first semester next year to have our next strategic plan, because that's nice, because we're still operating under our year 5 of our current strategic plan, but this will just continue to, we'll still continue until we get that new strategic plan, and then continue to move forward with the new vision. So very excited about it. It was nice to reconnect with Matt, nice to get the dates down and get really focused on when are we going for, how are we moving, and where are we going. Okay, any questions?
What was the first date you mentioned?
Surveys or the session, the first meeting date?
The first meeting date.
August 23rd. And I can share this with all of you if you want to see I can send that out to each of you tomorrow. Okay, I will do that. And then you can write them on your calendar. Yeah. I don't know, but the other thing is, if you notice that there are dates during those weeks that we're going on vacation, let us know, because then we can maybe adjust, or, we have right now the week of. So let us know, or, I have this huge thing at my work that I have to be a part of. Let us know so that we can hopefully try to make sure that all our board members are present.
And Is that the expectation of all board members are present at every meeting, or is there gonna be some that are not board?
The first three, I think, are the key, the August 23rd, August 30th, and the August 30th. I mean, those, I think, first three are key to really developing the piece. So then those three are the probably weeks that you want to look at. Is there anything happening those weeks? And then the rest will happen. You'll be a part of it, but it may be through communication, through email, it may be the administration, it may be the, a team of teachers working together. So we'll just kind of work, maybe some community members as part of that, and then we'll move forward with that. But those three pieces are probably the biggest thing, and then that week of November 1st would be that review and finalize strategic plan with the entire team. So mark those weeks down as definites. Yeah. Okay.
Anybody have any comments or questions? All right, that was it. I don't want to jump ahead here. We'll move on to transportation.
Okay, transportation. I had Renee Griffith, Splitter, and I had a wonderful meeting with Kim Price, and we talked about where we were with transportation, talked about where we wanted to go. So I looked at her and I said, okay, here's our goal, here's our vision, how can we do this? She is the one who knows the system, knows the routes, and can work magic, and that's why I put it into her hands. So she is looking at, can we reduce routes, and how many routes can we reduce? I gave her the proposal, let's start with 2, if we can go 3, that'd be great, but I don't know if we can go 3. So I am working with her on that part, and going to meet with her. We will meet again in April to look at that, and we will look at creating hubs around the city, is what we are looking at. She is going to contact Crete, their manager, the transportation manager there, because Crete does hubs. And so she's going to figure out, okay, well, how do they do it, what works, what doesn't work, and maybe so that we can tweak it to make it better in Beatrice. We'll meet again in April. So I've been working with her on that transportation component. Now, one other piece of information about transportation, and then any questions that you have about the policy, is Mid-States has been sold to First Student. Our 4-year, which means first, we're back. We're back to First Student. But our 4-year contract that we signed is still, it is still accepted by First Student, so they will acknowledge it. So one of the things that we have to do is we are looking at next week of having a meeting with Dean from Mid-States and then the representative from First Student, I don't have a name at this point in time, and just coming together to talk about kind of where we are with transportation and where we want to go. And just make sure that we're all on the same page. So that is one thing that we will be doing next week, and going with them. Now, our policy, we had our first reading in March. Are there any questions as you continue to look through it? The biggest change is it really focuses on our rural and our special education students. Those are the students receiving the rights. Now, we still provide transportation for in-town. It may be at a fee. However, our in-town also can apply for a waiver, as long as they Medicaid, SNAP, we ask them to bring those in and provide us with proof and documentation, and so then we have it, and we can document it that we waived the fee.
I had a question, just, it's a common thing I get in
Yep.
public, and I note this, so.
Yep.
With transportation, I get a lot of people ask, why are they charging at all, why isn't transportation free? And another common question or point they make is, well, I'm a taxpayer, pay taxes, don't they budget for transportation? And then I'm just inside of the whatever block range, and then I have to pay again. And so how do I respond to that? Like, because they reference Lewiston or Tri-County, where their transportation is free, and they even come here to pick up students in town and transport to their schools. So, I mean, what is our response to that?
State statute, what we do for in-town is actually more than state statute requires, and that is why we charge for in-town.
Okay.
Because state statute only requires us to transport kids that live outside of the district 4 miles, or kids that have an IEP and their IEP requires them to have transportation. So those are the only two groups of students that we have to. We open up our transportation to other students. Now, I will tell you, the majority of the students that are currently in our old policy, the students that were assessed a fee were middle school or high school students. Elementary students were not, as long as they lived outside that 9 blocks. That's changing for this year. So we will be assessing more fees for students because of if they don't meet the state statute requirements. So yes, you may get a few more questions
Right,
about
so do
that.
we come up with a budget first before this comes? Like, do we anticipate how much money we're gonna be collecting from the people that are paying a fee? And then, or do we come with the budget first on how much
We-
we're gonna put towards transportation?
We currently spend $700,000 every year on transportation. How much we come in, the amount that we bring in for fees is maybe $5,000 to $10,000.
Okay.
So it's a very minimal amount. It wouldn't even, I mean, if we started charging to help us cover transportation, that would not be good.
Sure.
That would be awful. I wouldn't do that to anyone. And so that, it's a very minimal, it is a minimal fee. We try to keep it, I think, I have to go back, and I know that I will bring it to the board. I think it's right at $130. So if you pay monthly, you do it over 10 months, so you're paying $13 a month,
Okay.
is what it is.
Sure,
Yep.
thank you.
That's a great budgeting question, and it, basically what we try and do is look at, well, we know what our contract's gonna be, so we budget for that amount, and then whatever fees are collected just to offset that amount, but it's, like Dr. Nielsen said, it's pretty insignificant offset in terms of what the actual cost to transport is.
Thank you.
And just another side note to that, and this is just an FYI, more of a, so you can tuck this away in your pocket. I don't know if it will ever be anything to consider, but there are districts in the state that, for students that live over that 4 miles, they don't transport those students, but what they do instead is pay a per diem per mile for a family to transport those students. So, and that's all paid off of attendance, which is kept through the student information system. And then in January, the family will receive a check from the school district on the basis of the state mileage reimbursement rate. And then again in June, so it's paid twice a year annually on that. So there are school districts that, and that's an allowable option, that they choose not to provide transportation at all because of the overhead costs involved with it, and instead pay parents mileage to do that, so.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of options out there.
Anything else about transportation?
And if we move to the hub situation or scenario, would there be a cost?
That's something that we are continuing to evaluate, and continuing to talk about. And so those are the things that we're having conversations right now. Our policy kind of leaves it open to administration as to maybe we don't charge. If we say we're going hubs, we don't charge, and we just run hubs. Again, what we would do is the bus capacity would be set, so it would become first come, first serve, would get a ride on the bus. You know, if you sign up too late, you probably wouldn't get a ride. So there are some things that we are working out just to figure out, you know, one, we need to figure out if we reduce to 6 buses for our regular routes, how many seats do we have? How many seats do we currently transport? If we reduce to 7, how many seats do we have, and then go from there. So we're kind of looking at those things and working that out, so we should have more details at the end of April, because Kim will have more of those pieces sorted out.
And what is the cost per route?
Cost per route is, I don't have that off.
Off the top of my head, yeah, I can do, hold
I
on.
mean, if you divide 700,000 by the number of routes we currently have.
14.
So is that
I think it's 14.
$50,000 a year roughly.
So if we cut 2 routes, we're saving $100,000 on that.
Yep. get this hot because this is an older model, so it takes a little while to make sure it's clear and ready to go. I got it. Yes. Okay, so we're going to go through a little bit of a presentation just to bring back some of the information that that we asked for at our last, or at the board meeting, and just to add a few extra little points. But the instructional specialist, instructional coach, is a position in the district, or it's a position that we would like to add to the district. So, why do we want to look at that? What is our purpose? Why are we bringing this to you? Couple of things as we look at the objectives. It's to help teachers focus on best practices, to help them understand and implement the instructional model, the Marzano instructional model that we utilize as a district, and to make sure that they are implementing those with fidelity. Make sure that we know that good teaching is good teaching. If I can engage kids, I can engage kids in a math class, an English class, a first grade class, a second grade class, whatever class I'm in, good teaching is good teaching. And so as we look at this, my degree is in English and French, but I can go into a math class, I can go into a science class, I can go into a kindergarten class, and I can work with those teachers on how to instruct students. The one thing I cannot do is I can't go into a class that's science and talk to them about content, or woods. I have no clue, and I don't even admit to have a clue. So my job when I go in there is to figure out how are they introducing new content? How are they helping kids process through that content? How are they helping kids review content? What assessments are they using to formatively assess their kids to figure out if they get it? And if they don't get it, how am I adjusting instruction to make sure that my kids that didn't get it are getting it? So the goal is to really focus on that idea of instruction, that idea of helping others grow. So the growth mindset is huge. And I think, when we look at the idea of the growth mindset, we have an amazing staff. And we want to continue to help them grow. We want to continue to help them move forward. We know that Mr. Alexander and I, if we look and say, well, I'm done growing, that does no one any good. I mean, that brings us to status quo, that brings us pretty stagnant, and then we don't figure out how to continue to move forward, and we don't figure out how to truly impact kids in maybe different ways than we impacted kids in ways, 5 years ago. So our goal is that growth mindset, our goal is about improvement, our goal is about helping our staff members continue to move forward, is what we are looking at with our objectives. Okay, the research. There is some research, and as we look at this is huge, and I think even with, this is research that has been out there for quite some time, sorry. We can move too, if I need to move, let me know. Okay. But as you look at the research, students who are placed with highly effective teachers for 3 years in a row significantly outperform average students. A student who has an outstanding teacher for just 1 year will remain ahead of their peers for the next few years. On the opposite side, a student with even one ineffective teacher may not catch up to higher peers for up to 3 years. And having one excellent teacher doesn't fully compensate for the effect of one ineffective teacher. Worse yet, students with 3 bad teachers in a row rarely catch up at all. So the teacher is the difference maker in the classroom. The teacher is the person that helps our students learn. So when we looked at these studies, they have been completed nationwide. Here's a study that was done in Tennessee area. What they focused on was what happened to students whose teachers produced high achievement versus those who produced low achievement. A couple of the things that they started with is they started in 3rd grade with a group. They were placed in 3 high-performing teachers. They scored on average at the 96th percentile. And when I'm talking percentile, because we're going to look at percentile in a little bit, if I say it's the 96th percentile, that means on this national test, I am doing at or better than 96% of the people that took the test. So that's pretty huge, because you you go up to 99. On Tennessee statewide assessment, mathematics assessment at the end of 5th grade. When children with comparable achievement histories starting in 3rd grade were placed with 3 low-performing teachers in a row, their average score on the same mathematics assessment was at the 44th percentile. That was a 52 percentile point difference. Why do we want highly effective teachers in every classroom? Because we know the results. We know what research has shown, what can happen. Dallas, Texas, they conducted a study just to replicate it. However, they added reading to this one. Now we're looking at 1st grade students who were fortunate enough to be placed with 3 high-performing teachers in a row. Their average performance on the math section of the Iowa Test of Basic Skills increased from the 63rd to the 87th percentile. In contrast to their peers with similar scores, whose performance decreased from the 58th to the 40th percentile. A difference of 42 points, and then in the reading it was a difference of 44 percentile points. So, highly effective teachers close gaps. They push us forward. They are the ones that are able to produce gains. Why do we need to make sure that we have highly effective teachers and help them grow and become better? Because it directly impacts each and every child that is in that classroom. So that really is what we are looking at. Our goal is to have our students achieving at high levels. Like I said, we have amazing teachers, but we all have areas where we can continue to grow. We all have areas that may not be our strength. I look at myself and I know that budget is not necessarily a strength of mine. But I will say in the last 3 years, I've grown in my understanding of budget because I've worked next side someone who has helped me do that. So, our goal is to continue to push. Our goal is to continue to help all teachers grow because we know it's what's best for kids. And I will tell you that is why I'm here. I know that's why Mr. Alexander's here. That's why all of you on the board are here. That's why all of our administrators are here. We want what's best for the kids in our district. Okay, the next piece I'm going to show you is data. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the year, we talked about COVID a lot, but the learning loss that's happened because of COVID, the COVID impact, we've talked about that piece. In January, February timeframe, when we sent the data to the Omaha World Herald, we didn't have our complete picture. So at that point in time, I did not have a picture to send. At this point in time, we have our complete data picture, and so I'm going to kind of show you where we are. The first thing I want to, there is a line in here, and this shows the 50th percentile. So what this is grade level percentile. So again, normally when we look at our data, most of the time we land 50th percentile or above, which means we are doing at or better than 50% of the students that have taken this assessment nationwide. So when we look at our peers, because it's kind of a comparison model. So you can see this is a 3-year trend. You have K through 11. We do not assess our seniors with math assessment. We have K through 11. You can see that for the most part, most years are above the 50th percentile, above that line. Okay, so now we're going to dig a little bit deeper. Here is this year. So this is from fall to winter. So you can see, this is fall, the blue is fall. The orange is, or I think it's orange, is winter. So you can see where we are at this point in time. And you know, there are some things that, as my brain starts going, as I was putting all this data together, I'm like, okay, let's figure out what in the world is going on. What is this telling me? Number one, I think it's telling us that COVID has impacted our kids, okay? And there are some things that we have to do in order to help address some of these pieces. Number two, I know that tests are not always for everyone. I understand that too. And some kids struggle with tests, but the math test is what we have to use. So we do look at that. One of the other things that I find interesting, as I trip myself, is 9, 10, and 11 here. Notice there's not much change. Well, our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade have had the K-8 instruction already. They have a pretty solid foundation. They have a lot of skills in their toolbox that they are able to bring with them. So I think with the 9th, 10th, and 11th, we are seeing other things that COVID impacted. Maybe the ability to turn in homework on time, maybe the ability to want to do things, you know, other things such as that. And maybe the ability to stay organized, because I went from a schedule that was so full to all of a sudden stopping everything, and now I have to give back. So there's some things that we are seeing there, but as you look, the majority of our sections are below that 50th percentile. So it is something that needs to be continued to be addressed. Okay, here is math. Again, this is our 3-year trend. Now, you will notice that there are also some gaps too in there, and that is because at the middle school and high school, there were times during the winter they did not give the winter assessment, they gave fall and spring. And so we are starting to give the winter assessment, especially at we have adjusted things at the middle school, because when NSCAS changes, which NSCAS is the new NISA, but the assessment system, when it changes, it is going through year, so it will track growth from fall to winter to spring. So we will give all 3 assessments as we look at that. So let's look at math now over this year. Again, we're still seeing right here, there are some areas that we need to address. We need to look at how can we help intervene. Now, I will tell you, we have other interventions that we're looking at too. Our Best Possible Summer will be going on and will be in person. We will be providing RTI sessions, kind of that intervention session for our kids. So if I look and say, okay, I've got a 4th grader, Morgan Nielsen, needs a little bit of support on math. Well, we're gonna hook her up with a teacher that is doing an intervention support. She's gonna go to summer school. She's going to be pulled out for 15 minutes a day just to work on some of the math skills that she's missing. And then she'll be back in her class. We are also, through the state, we are getting access to Zern Math, which is awesome. And so that will be accessible to anyone K-8. So anyone that wants it, we will have full access to it, and it's just an online application where our kids can go just to continue with those math practice skills. Okay, here is math science. And science tends to be the area where we tend to do a little bit better. It is a little bit of a different assessment, and the MAP science is different than what NSCAS science, which our statewide assessment is going to be. We are waiting for MAP to move to the NSCAS science so that we can start seeing where our kids are, because the new science assessment that our kids are taking right now is a lot of problem solving, a lot of critical thinking, a lot of reading, very high level questioning. It's all at that depth of knowledge 4, level 4. So here's where we are if you look at currently fall to winter. Okay, and the last one is language. So here's 3-year trend for language. And then here's where we end for language with this year, so fall to winter. Now, on language, we give it 2 through 11. Science, we give 4 through 11, but 11 is not norm. They do not norm 11th grade in MAP, so we just go with the norm where we have our data. We use just the 10th grade. Any questions about the data?
Just a little bit
Yep.
of point of clarification. MAP stands for Measure of Academic Progress. I don't know if we've said that before. And I know, like you said, Eric, being new, sometimes
Yes, sorry.
we have a lot of acronyms. So, and it's an individualized assessment. And so as the student takes it, it adjusts to their level. It's a computerized assessment that adjusts to their level. So it's really a neat tool that helps us, as long as we can keep students clearly focused on the task at hand and taking the assessment, it really gives us a pretty accurate picture of how they do. And we can give it, as you've seen here, we can give it in the fall and the winter to try and gauge where students are at and what their growth has been or lack of growth, and then we can target interventions to interact with students. So it is a really useful tool. The difference between it and the INSCAS test or the state test is it's not a one-shot wonder. It's not a one-shot testing session where a student comes in and depending on what happened to them that morning before they got to school could impact their score. I mean, that could still happen here, but we know we're going to be looking at those test scores again down the road, so it's really good to have.
And I know it's nice to be at that 50%, but I think what concerns me is when you see a loss of growth, like looking at that particular one, 6th grade. They
Yeah.
didn't score as well
In the winter.
after 5 months of school as they did in the fall. And if you go back a couple of them, I mean, every one of them does not look good to me.
How do these look though compared to the rest of the state? Is this what everyone is seeing? Is every school board seeing this?
I don't have state data for math because we all have our own individual math. In SCAS, you'll have state data. I would have to call school districts to get this from them because we just don't readily share it with others. I would assume that other school districts, but that is a good question and I may send that out. I know that when the Omaha World Herald did their report, it was very similar. I mean, they really reported on the idea of, the validity of COVID learning loss.
And they said that was across the board.
Yeah.
Through the state, that there was some loss. I just really would have liked to see them at least maintain.
I mean, I know
where they
how
were.
it felt going back to work after being at home for months and getting back to an office setting. So I can't imagine what it would be like for a child to go back to school after
Yeah.
months of being home without the routine that they get at school.
Does that
So
test
this-
change
Like,
between
we kept
fall
our
and winter?
kids in school.
Yeah.
Does that test change what?
Within, so let's just say within 6th grade, does the test change from the fall to the winter?
Yes.
So
What
that
happens
could
is,
skew it too, right?
Yes.
well, it could, yes, but there gets to be a point in time where you get to be so high that you actually, okay, so when I go in and take my test, I start it, and it figures out, it says, well, last time you took it, you were at 6th grade first month. So we're gonna start you with questions 6th grade first month. You get the first one right, you're gonna jump up to 6th grade second month, or 6th grade 1.5, Then you jump up, oh, I got this one wrong, now I'm going back down. So it adjusts based upon you. Now, when you get to be so high that you are, but the thing is if they are that, they're already up here in the percentile and they aren't going to drop from like the 85th to the 40th. If they do, that would be a huge concern as to what's going on. But if I am too high, I will tell you there are times where it will adjust you negatively at times, so.
And the thing about these tests is they're all aligned to the state standards. So within the test, the questions may change a little bit, but they're still questions that are designed to test the knowledge of the students, of what the student learned about the state standards. So it does fluctuate a little bit, but it shouldn't be enough to see that big of a difference.
So how many times have they tested then, say in the fall and then winter, so if they show up having a bad day,
Right.
that's not cool.
There are times where the teachers will look and say, okay, Jackie, I know that you should have done better. So what I'm gonna do is, oh my gosh, I just realized that this happened on the morning of, and they will go back and look at the child and say, okay, do you wanna retest? And most of them that they do that with will improve. Now, I will tell you, what's interesting is when we switch from, we give math 3 times a year, when INSCAS comes into play, when the state, because we will not give both INSCAS and math. I will not do that to a child. I will not give them, and INSCAS will take the place of math. NWEA is the entity that creates math. NWEA is also the entity that creates INSCAS. So they are going to mirror. They are going to look very similar. However, our NSCAS, it will be through year, so we won't have that opportunity to reassess, and that's one of my concerns I've shared with the state is, hold on here. We use this to figure out where kids are and then determine where we need to go. And if we have a student that shows up and it's a bad day or something happened, we don't maybe have an accurate picture of where this child is. And so those are some of the concerns that I've shared with the state too is we need support on that one.
I don't know if I'd like to add something to this conversation. At the high school, our MAP scores are better than they have been. One of the things that our teachers do, and part of our school improvement goal, one of our school improvement goals is to make MAP a focus. So what that means is, so many times kids were taking the MAP test and they didn't really know why they were taking it or how they had scored before. So our teachers at the high school have, through that school improvement goal, they will purposefully sit down with each student, show them their MAP score data from over time, and show them that here's where you scored last time. Sure would be great if we could go up, basically, and just putting more of an emphasis on it. And I don't know, Janet, either why we went down from the start of the year to the second in the 9th and 10th grade, but I know that that's helped us raise up. And I think, I just wanted to share it. Sometimes we give assessments, and it kind of goes to this comment of kids are having bad days. Sometimes we give them, and especially for high school kids, they really kind of wonder, why am I doing this? There's no grade attached to it. It doesn't impact my grade in the class. But if we can make it personalized and show them how you've done previously, that seems like that's made a difference for us.
And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger value in these particular tests is, this is good data and it's good value, but I think the bigger value is when teachers are looking at the different data points. So here's the reading score, but when they start dissecting that reading score, is it comprehension? Which aspects of it are? And when that's broken down and the teachers are using that data to then improve the areas of need, that to me is more important than the ultimate score. Because I know, if I know they're already high in this, so I'm still doing this, and then I'm doing these interventions to build up the pieces they're missing, that's ultimately gonna lead to better learning, or a student who's reading at a higher level. And so I think that's really where the value is in looking at this data, is digging into the pieces of where do we need to be targeted.
I look at that slide, and I think that's where our school improvement goals had an impact on our scores.
Right, because when you look at that, that does not look, this slide looks better than some of the other slides that we have.
I guess I have a question. I mean, on some of these, like Jason said, especially at the high school, there's such a small difference. My question is, over the course of that year, how many kids did we not have tests that may have previously tested because they were not, in school? Maybe they had been, pulled out of school to be homeschooled. I guess I would be curious how many kids took the test blue year over orange year. Do we
It's
know?
actually pretty close. I do know numbers, and my numbers were not off
Okay.
by too far. Yeah, it was actually, it was maybe 2 students, but then all of a sudden there were 2 students gained here. It was maybe 5. It was not a significant,
That was my concern.
Yep.
Was it a significant number?
no.
And also, if the kids in high school miss that day, they do not make that up, correct?
The teachers.
The teacher can, there's a window of time, so if a
Yeah.
student's not there, they can give it a different day. It's not like an ACT, it's not like
We'll chat
ACT.
later.
What?
I'll talk to you later.
Maybe some kids didn't miss it, but they know it's coming. Maybe somebody doesn't come to school because they know they're gonna take it, but I know in our IEPs, we use the MAP scores a lot in IEP data. And I know in IEPs, if a student's not present at school, there's a window of time that they can take it when they are back in school.
I think you also have to realize too, in our younger grades, as Mr. Voigt said,
when you dissect it, trying to see the growth of a child and really break down where they need to grow. But the also thing that's frustrating for myself, and I'm just speaking on myself, is our kindergarten maps is almost 30 minutes long. That's a 5-year-old listening to a headset for 30 minutes, clicking through as fast as they can because they want to see what's on the next screen like it's an iPad. And you can't guide them. You're sitting there with them, you're doing it in small groups and stuff. So I think that's like, and that's hard on kindergarten. I don't care if it's the beginning of kindergarten or the end of kindergarten, that's hard to do. And I think the stuff that Dr. Nielsen's showing you really shows the effect COVID had on our first grade. Our first grade, it's not great, and our kindergarten's not great because they missed out on how much preschool coming in. And it's not an excuse, it's reality. I think also our high school has done a phenomenal job with the online learning. I think it looks at it too and says, high school can do online learning, elementary, you can't. You need to be in person.
And
And I think
middle
that's
school, you can't.
I mean, it's bad, and, you know, we knew coming in we were gonna be a year and a half behind, because, especially with our K-1, 2. And Dr. Nielsen just showed you data about the effectiveness of a teacher. Well, they're trying to do that in a year. It's gonna take several years to get caught up, and we have to make sure we have our strategies in place for our teachers to give them the support they need to become the best teachers possible because of this. And so when we look at this, administrators are frustrated, teachers are frustrated, but we also have to remember we're trying to look at the growth of kids. And my own daughter grew 33 points, but she still isn't where she needs to be because she came in lower. And that's okay, but she grew so far. Other kids will grow 2 points or 3 points or whatever it may be. But as you know, Mr. Voigt said, breaking it down is where we have to do our job in making sure our teachers have the strategies to be successful for each kid in that classroom, which in the end will be successful. But there's a lot of factors that goes into the snapshot, and I'm thankful we do get to give it throughout the year to see that, so it isn't just like the NSCAS, the one test wonder, where you either do well or you don't. And so I think there's a lot of factors into the maps. And if you ever come in, our elementary teachers in Lincoln, Paddock's daughter, it don't matter where you go, they set goals every single time they take it. They know what they did in the past, kind of like what Mr. Suter said, and a goal of trying to get it, and they want that instant feedback. And they come running to your office if they get it. I mean, it don't matter if they got it by 1 point or 10 points, they come running, I got my goal, I got my goal. And so that emphasis of it is, because like Mr. Suter said, elementary, high school, there's not a lot of meat to it to hold them accountable. Elementary is the same way, especially when you get to 4 or 5, they're like, why are we doing this? Well, we want to see how smart you are. We want to see what you've learned. We want to see how well our teachers are teaching it. And that's a hard concept sometimes.
That may have answered my question. Do we see such a big difference by the time we get up to high school in these lower grades due to the fact that they have IEPs or just they don't know nothing at younger ages, and you're teaching them how to learn and what everything is. So I can understand seeing a smaller growth as you go up, but by the time we get up in the 8th and 9th grades, they've learned by that time. Could that play into why high school, I mean, granted, we have good high school teachers, but, and then also Zoom, high schools are better at doing the computer online learning, but would that have something to play into it with all of the IEPs and just kids not knowing? Have we seen anything that would tie that back into, like when I was a kid? I know we didn't
Don't
have.
go back that far.